Revealed, 7 Sinister Hospice Nightshift Truths that haunted nurses for years. The air in Willow Creek Hospice was thick with dread, a palpable tension that almost crackled in the silence of night. It was nursing's dirty little secret, sweet old patients who slipped away, murmuring about shadows that weren't supposed to be there. And Sarah Thompson felt it every time the clock struck midnight, every time the fluorescent lights flickered above her head. She had sworn a nurse's oath, but lately, the whispers of her dying patients twisted into a haunting reminder that not every soul found peace. That it began as subtle. Just shadows on the wall, just her own fatigue. One night, while checking charts, she spotted a note, a hastily scrawled message reading, "They're watching." Shivers cascaded down her spine. It was her mind playing tricks, she told herself. The pressure of divorce and her mother's illness loomed over her like a dark cloud. But deep down, as the night deepened, those whispers turned into anguished cries echoing in the halls. Sarah, it was a breathy rustle she couldn't ignore, sending chills racing through her veins. The machines beeped steadily beside Mr. Thompson, a patient of hers slipping into his final minutes. He'd once been a lively man, now reduced to barely a whisper. His blank expression caught her, glazed over as if in a trance, and that's when she noticed no one else was around. Just the two of them against the backdrop of flickering lights and the distant creaking of floors. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Her unease morphed into suspicion as she uncovered the threads of death that were stitched into the fabric of her night shifts. The administration downplayed it, insisting death was natural, inevitable. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling. 5 patients, a horrifying number, had passed quietly while she kept watch. It gnawed at her, twisting her insides into knots. What was going on when the lights dimmed and laughter faded? That's when Doug's dark, penetrating gaze loomed large in her mind. He was her ally, her confidant. But was there more? As she confronted him with lingering questions, he only offered practiced comforts. "It's the job," he assured her, a hint of unease behind a forced smile. Those words vibrated with a dissonance that made her heart race. Was he involved in something sinister? Fear thrummed under her skin as she collected evidence. Each day, each death, a clue that spiraled deeper into shadowy depths, punctured only by the gunshot terror of the threat she received: back off, or her family would pay. The hallways darkened, shadows creeping relentlessly closer. With every turn, every echo of her footsteps, Sarah felt the walls closing in. Would she stay to unveil the truth and risk everything she loved? Or was it safer to remain blind, to bury the haunting secrets beneath the weight of night? Her breath caught in her throat as she stood at a crossroads, waiting as darkness pooled around, ready to reveal the unimaginable horror lurking beneath the institution meant to be a sanctuary. What fate awaited her, and who or what was truly watching over the dying? Each night the oppressive weight of dread thickened in the hospital air, wrapping around Sarah like a vine closing in. The flickering lights above her sputtered ominously, every crackle felt as if time itself were conspiring against her. With every dying patient, she felt herself teetering on the brink of something darker than just mortality. She peered into Mr. Thompson's room again, the silence heavy, the machines beeping, a cruel reminder of the life ebbing away. Time felt distorted, as if minutes stretched into hours. Shadows flickered in the corners of her vision, and she could swear they were growing bolder. Were they real, or just figments born from sleep deprivation and terror? Sarah, the whisper danced through the room, not from her patient but from somewhere deeper within the hospice. A flicker of movement caught her eye outside in the hall. It was a fleeting glimpse, a figure darting from sight, melting into the darkness. She jerked back, heart racing, her breath quickening. She forced herself to approach Mr. Thompson. He was slipping, his gaze turned toward the wall, lips muttering incoherently. Was he seeing them too? The shadows? She leaned in, feeling a queasy dread wash over her. She had to ask. Mr. Thompson, who is there? His eyes darted away from her, unfocused and distant. A moment of clarity flickered in his gaze, his sentence half-formed, "They come for the week then," as if drifting back into a trance, his body slackened. "Doug!" She called urgently, her voice echoing down the empty corridor. His presence in the chaotic nights had become a steadying balm. When she turned, her feet dragging back down the hall, she felt the air shift, the darkness thickening, pressing against her. Shadows merged, forming shapes that loomed ever closer. "Sarah?" Doug's voice broke the spell, and she spun around. His face bore a shadow of worry, a creased brow that only unsettled her further. "Did you see someone?" She panted, the fear rising in pitch. "In the hall, just now." He shook his head. "It's just the night playing tricks, Sarah. You know how it is." But the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "No. I swear I saw something." Her hands trembled, and with every vacant stare from patients who had lost their battle, she could feel herself cracking. "And Mr. Thompson he has been whispering," she pressed, desperation coating her words. What if they're they? There's no they, it's just before he could finish, the lights flickered violently. A chilling darkness rushed forward, extinguishing the glow above, and the air was filled with a suffocating silence that set off alarm bells in her mind. Suddenly, a loud, anguished scream echoed from the room down the hall, drawing them both closer. The echo reverberated, a sound of pure horror. They raced down the corridor, their breaths mingling with the panic thick in the air. When they reached the door, a sense of dread hung heavy. Inside, a patient thrashed on the bed, eyes wide and unseeing, mouth agape as if caught in the throes of some unseen force. "Get away!" he screamed, and Sarah recoiled, heart pounding. "They're coming! They're coming for all of us!" Doug stepped forward, but she grabbed his arm, a cold sweat trickling down her back. "What if it's true?" she whispered, staring into the chaos unfolding, the man a vessel of pure terror. The unmistakable feeling of eyes bore down on her from the shadows, chilling her soul. What if the truth was worse than she imagined? Now, a new question lay heavy on her mind. If the walls were closing in, what were they closing in on? Each heartbeat echoed louder, each breath a reminder that every secret had a life of its own and something was watching. The Thrasher's screams echoed through the room, making Sarah's skin crawl. It pierced through the suffocating silence that enveloped the hospice, cutting deep into her core. "They're coming for us!" the man wailed, his voice trembling with sheer panic. She could hardly process his words, each syllable twisting like a knife within her. Doug stepped closer, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for the hidden threat. "We need to restrain him," he urged, trying to maintain some semblance of control. But Sarah couldn't move. She stood frozen, gripped by the horror radiating from the patient. The man thrashed again, wild and frantic. "You can't let them in. You have to." His shout was cut off as he suddenly seized, body convulsing like a puppet with its strings cut. A horror snaked its way through Sarah, coiling tight around her heart. She felt lightheaded, the world around her narrowing until all that existed was the frantic scene unfolding before her. Doug rushed to the bedside, grabbing the man's wrists to hold him down. Sarah finally shook off the paralysis, but an unseen weight pressed down on her chest, making each step feel laborious. She stepped closer, breath shallow, trying to make sense of the chaos. "They're here," the man gasped, eyes wide, darting to the corners of the room. "They're watching, waiting." "Who?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely a murmur as a chill swept over her. But the patient was lost in his own terrified world, eyes reflecting a terror that wasn't just his own. The lights flickered again, a strobe of uncertainty, stealing any light-hearted hope that this was merely a nightmare. The shadows danced at the edges of her vision, taunting her, beckoning her to look into their depths. "Sarah," Doug's voice quivered. What if he's right? Her heart raced. There it was again, that unshakable feeling that something beyond the veil of flesh and bone lurked just out of sight. What if there were things here that fed on fear, uncertainty, and despair? What if the patients weren't just fading away but were being consumed by something far more sinister? Could it be that these shadows were accumulations of souls waiting for their time to take others? No, she whispered, shaking her head as if to dispel the thought. Suddenly, from the shadows, a figure seemed to ripple and take form. Darkness pooled together, coiling into a shape resembling a human silhouette, its edges blurred, as if it didn't belong in this world. It lingered just beyond the threshold, where the light dared not reach. "Look!" Doug shouted, pointing, eyes wide with fear. Sarah turned, and her breath caught in her throat as the apparition solidified. Its cold presence clawed at her sanity. A thin, ghastly smile stretched across its face, cold and mocking. This was no illusion, this was real. The figure leaned closer, and she felt ice spread through her veins. "We must go," Doug urged, his voice strained. But the shadows seemed to pulse, a wicked heartbeat echoing their intent. "Leave him!" Sarah cried, her instinct tugging at her heart. "We can't just abandon him." But the urgency in Doug's eyes rooted her fear deeper, bringing forth a gut-wrenching dilemma. "Do we save ourselves?" he pressed, glancing back at the now silent figure on the bed. "Or do we stay and risk their wrath?" The apparition drew nearer, extending an inky hand, beckoning. "Choose!" Doug shouted, shaking her. "Now!" Her heart thundered. Shadows swirled thick and alive, whispering secrets in her ear. And then she heard it, a low, resonating hum that permeated the air as the room began to tremble. The walls groaned, and she realized with horror that the boundaries of her reality were shifting. They were closing in, with reality unraveling around her. Sarah faced the impossible choice, to stand and fight the darkness, or to flee and leave everything behind. Before she could decide, a scream pierced through the darkness, another voice, another soul joining the cries for help. Who was it this time? What had she unleashed? They wouldn't wait long. Something dark was coming for them all, and time was running out. What lay beyond the walls they were clinging to? What would they find when the darkness consumed them? Panic surged within Sarah as the room pulsed with an energy unlike any she had felt before. Doug's grip on her shoulder grew tighter, his eyes wide and desperate. "We have to make a choice, Sarah. Please." The atmosphere was thick, like ropes tightening around her throat. She thought of the man on the bed, lifeless now, as the figure inched closer. Its face twisted into a grotesque mockery of sympathy, the corners of its mouth curling upwards like it found her fear delicious. The scream echoed in her mind, reverberating off the walls but fading into something unrecognizable. "Go!" Doug shouted, jerking her back to reality. "Now!" But terror had seeped into her bones. The darkness pulled at her thoughts, whispering promises of safety if she submitted, if she surrendered her will. Shadows dripped into the corners, snaking out like hungry tendrils. With a sudden surge of clarity, she screamed, "No! We can't let it take us." Her voice shook as she grasped Doug's arm, the panic lifting slightly, even as the walls continued to tremble. "We need to find a way out. There has to be something." Just then, the shadows pulsed violently, a wave of dark energy crashing against them. Sarah felt cold breath against her face, and in that instant, she was certain they were no longer alone. Figures began to emerge, flickering in and out, their faces contorted in eternal anguish. Patients, their empty eyes screaming for release, surrounded them like a dark harbinger of dread. "Run!" Doug yelled, but they were already enshrined in a chokehold of foreboding. The very ground beneath them seemed to warble, as if resisting their every attempt to escape. Sarah didn't even know where to go. All she saw were the shadowy figures, faces twisting in pain, lips mouthing silent screams. Memories flooded back. Each face she recognized. Each soul that had slipped away, leaving behind only echoes of despair. Were they the ones watching? Were these phantoms waiting to reclaim what had slipped through their fingers? Sarah. Doug's voice sliced through her thoughts. To the exit. He tugged her arm, and she ran, following him through the shifting shadows that seemed to claw at their backs. Each step felt like wading through molasses, the dread gripping them tighter. They stumbled through the doorway, only to find the corridor morphing. With every second that passed, it grew darker, narrowing in, closing off their escape route. Keep moving. Doug urged, his voice a primal growl. Just as they reached a bend, an unearthly shriek split the air, the kind that could make your heart drop. Sarah and Doug stopped in their tracks, terror paralyzing them as they turned back, realizing the shadows were thickening behind them like a storm. A figure loomed larger than the rest, pulsating with an energy that sent shockwaves of dread straight into Sarah's chest. The eyes glowed fiercely, two burning embers piercing through the dark. A voice, not unlike the man's, emerged, chilling and low. You could have saved them in that moment. A flash of recognition hit her. This darkness wasn't just fed by fear, it thrived on guilt, regret. And as the wails grew louder, filling the corridor with those drawn from the shadows, Sarah realized they were trapped not just in the hospice but in the web of their own pasts. Sarah. Doug's voice broke through once more. She turned to face him, seeing the resolve in his eyes fighting against the encroaching fear. We can't let them take us. We fight. Together. But as the figure loomed closer, stretching its dreadful arms, she wondered if fighting would be enough. Would they ever escape? Or would they join the chorus of haunted souls forever? A flicker caught her eye, the emergency exit sign dimly glowing at the end of the hall. But as she set her sights on it, the darkness swelled, threatening to extinguish the last glimmer of hope. Time was slipping away. What if it's a trap? Doug whispered harshly, eyes darting. With adrenaline pumping and shadows closing in, Sarah clenched her fists. We have to try. We can't let fear consume us. Just as they made their move, a guttural laugh echoed behind them, chilling her to the bone. What awaited them beyond the exit? A way out or something worse? They darted down the corridor, breath coming in short gasps, hearts pounding like war drums. Doug led the way, pulling Sarah, who was torn between running for her life and turning back to confront the phantoms who tormented them. Shadows danced along the wall, thrumming with life, eager to snatch them back. Faster. Doug urged, urgency lacing his voice. In the haze of chaos, they bolted toward the flickering exit sign, its feeble glow like a lighthouse in a storm. But the air felt heavier with every desperate step. The laughter from behind swallowed their hope, drowning it in an abyss of dread. Don't look back. Doug shouted. But the hunger of the shadows was undeniable. Sarah felt their pull, the whispers slithering into her mind. Images flashed, names, faces, people she had known. It all poured out in a staccato reel of haunting memories. The cool blue eyes of a lost friend, the last breath of a patient she couldn't save, the constant sense of failure. The darkness around her began to twist those memories, turning love into anguish, hope into torment. Sarah. Doug's voice snapped her back just as a hideous face lunged from the shadows, a ghostly ache of despair etched into its features. She stumbled, nearly losing her grip. The exit was still distant, but ominously closer. As they sprinted, the walls began to snake in, the corridor narrowing, almost forcing them into the arms of the shadows. Don't let go. He screamed, pulling her forward, the world around them pulsing in tandem with their fear. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, and a heavy rumble shook the building. It's collapsing. Sarah cried out, adrenaline surging through her. The exit. Doug shouted again, and for a fleeting moment, a surge of hope bubbled within her. But the eerie laughter morphed into piercing wails, echoing off the walls like sirens in the night. Ghostly faces surged toward them, eyes hollow, mouths agape as if pleading for solace. Each gnarled visage clawed at her sanity, reminding her of every regret, every failure. "Keep pushing," Doug yelled as he pulled her closer to him, the heat of his presence grounding her in that moment of rising panic. They resumed running, legs straining, desperation driving them, but the darkness felt alive, chasing them, closing in. Sarah's explosion of resolve began to falter as the reality of the specters threatened to swallow her. "We must fight. Together." She turned to Doug, her voice trembling but fierce. Fueled by fear, they lunged for the emergency exit, the door looming larger as they darted forward. Just a few more steps slipping into the darkness meant embracing what they feared the most. With each push, Sarah felt the chill behind her, closer, wrapping around her like a shroud. Her heart raced uncontrollably, echoing the terror in the air. Doug's grip was reassuring, but as shadows enveloped him for just a teetering moment, she felt the panic surge anew, and then, they reached the door. The moment was electric. An unseen weight tugged at Sarah, almost dragging her back. But she leaped forward, grasping the cold metal handle. She turned it as a cacophony of anguished cries surrounded them, the shadows colliding like a terrifying wave behind. The door didn't budge. "Push harder," Doug yelled, his voice cracking under the strain. She threw her weight against it as echoes of sorrow wrapped tighter around her. Something tugged at Doug. "No!" she screamed, turning just in time to see the darkness wrap around him like a vice. Panic flooded her, adrenaline coursed through her veins as she clutched the doorknob desperately, another hand of shadow creeping into view, seeking to drag Doug into the void. "Sarah!" he shouted, his eyes wide. "You have to. I won't leave you." But the darkness was stronger. It fed off their fear, their sorrow. With one final heave, she thrust herself against the door. It swung open slightly, light spilling into the suffocating dark. "Come on!" But the shadows were almost upon them, hungry and relentless. Doug was still being pulled backward. "Go! I'll hold it back!" he cried, choking on the shadows. Clawing into his body. Her heart shattered as she hesitated. Should she leave him? Or stay and face this nightmare together? As the shadows hissed and coiled, Sarah realized she had to make a choice. The door was open, but would she step into the light? What awaited her was still unclear, but one thought flooded her mind: what would it take to truly escape? With a deep breath, she made her decision. She was alive. But the light had flickered like a dying candle in a storm. Sarah hesitated, heart racing, torn between the abyss behind her and the uncertainty ahead. "Sarah!" Doug's voice pierced through the chaos. It wrenched her heart, twisted it into a knot. She pivoted, fear clenching her throat. The darkness writhed, claws of shadow gripping Doug's arms, dragging him into the void. His face contorted in agony, the supernatural weight pressing against him was an unholy punishment. "No!" She lunged back, a reflex fueled by dread. Yet the door loomed, a thin sliver of salvation. The wails morphed into shrieks, demanding her attention, begging her to abandon all hope. "Go!" Doug's eyes bore into hers, fierce yet desperate. "You must fight this." Her chest tightened. What was waiting for her in the light? Would it be any better than this nightmare? Shadows unfolded like smoke tendrils, reaching for him, twisting toward her. Sarah could almost feel their chill biting at her ankles. "Do it!" he screamed, his voice strained and breaking, the shadows pulling him further into an empty maw. With horror curling at her core, she saw her past splinter into 1,000 shards every moment, every choice. What had led them here? Would she find solace outside this place, or merely another hell? Sarah's body screamed for flight. The door beckoned, yet the pain in Doug's eyes anchored her in place. They had always faced difficulties together, but this, the depths of hell wanting to feast on her sanity, was a challenge unlike any other. The shadows hissed, whispering her name, twisting words of defeat. It was a twisted lullaby meant to lure her in. The laughter of her tormentors echoed now, a dissonant symphony clawing at reason. Sarah, now. Doug's voice rang with urgency, breaking through the grasp of despair. It crystallized her choice. I'm coming. She shouted, propelled by a surge of resolve. Just as a shadow darted towards Doug, she surged back, throwing all her weight against the door. Help me! Sarah roared, her voice raw as she thrust forward, adrenaline flooding her veins. The door creaked but did not yield. Help me! Doug echoed, gasps turning to shouts, the darkness suffocating him. Her fingers slipped momentarily against the doorknob, slick with fear. The weight of despair was palpable, as if the walls themselves threatened to collapse. Sarah, the shadows snatched at him, a vortex of dread closing in, and then with a gut-wrenching cry, she pushed harder, throwing all her weight into the door one final time. It burst open, light flooding in, blinding yet alive. She stumbled forward, almost lost in the brilliance. But a part of her faltered, a part that remembered the darkness she had left behind. In that fleeting moment, she felt a tether, an invisible thread connecting her to Doug. He was her anchor, and she almost turned back. But no. Wait for me. She cried, her voice a desperate melody against the chaos. Go. He shouted, the shadows swallowing him deeper. She leaped into the brightness, the doors slamming shut behind her with a thunderous crack. A gasp escaped Sarah as the world reeled. Sunlight poured through, illuminating an unfamiliar garage strewn with old tools and boxes. The scent of oil filled the air, far removed from the choking darkness she had fled. Breathing heavily, she felt her heart pounding against her ribs. Had she truly escaped? The light felt safe, yet something deep inside bubbled with uncertainty. Doug! She shouted, panic slicing through her. There was no response. Was he still trapped? The thought clawed at her mind, burrowing itself deeper. Sinking to the ground, she hugged her knees, shaking. What had she just walked away from? The garage door rattled as if something was trying to push through. Sarah's breath caught. What if the darkness followed her? What if this was merely the eye of the storm? The doorknob rattled violently, the hollow thuds pounding like a heartbeat. Sarah, a voice creaked from the other side, unmistakably Doug's voice, yet layered with an eerie echo that sent chills down her spine. Doug? She whispered, dread rising like bile. Help me, he pleaded, yet it felt different, a chilling echo of the past, a memory twisted by shadows. Sarah scrambled to her feet, heart racing. What lay behind the door? Could she face it again, or was this an even darker trap? And then it hit her hard. She might have escaped the physical realm of shadows, but the true nightmare had only just begun. The rattling grew louder, frantic, like a child begging to be let out of a dark room. Sarah felt a cold sweat bloom across her skin, chills creeping over her as she backed against a dusty workbench. The air hung thick, suffocating her with shadows of doubt. Was this some twisted game? Sarah, please, the voice on the other side twisted her heart, tugging at it like a wretched marionette. You have to let me in. It's getting worse. Behind the door, darkness loomed, taunting her with unspeakable horrors. The echoes of Doug's voice felt wrong, warping into something sinister. She wanted to hold on to hope, wanted to believe he was still in there, fighting. But the lingering scent of old oil mixed with the coppery tang of fear muddled her thoughts. What do I do? She whispered to herself, her breath hitching. She pressed her palms against the door, its surface rough and cold, the wood creaking like it was alive. With every beat of her heart, dread rose, squeezing at her throat. She wanted to scream, wanted to throw open the door and trust that Doug would be on the other side, waiting for her. But he had been swallowed by the shadows, dragged into a hell she barely understood. What if she let something terrible in? Let me in, Sarah. His voice grated, hollow and insistent. Doug, the name fell from her lips, fragile and broken. She could hardly determine the feeling it stirred: love, regret, guilt. And then the shadows shifted, swirling beneath the crack of the garage door like a living beast. She could sense it, the creeping dread that seeped from the dimensions behind her. The claustrophobic feeling settled deep in her bones, urging her to flee. But would running carry her further from the truth? The door vibrated with a low hum. "Sarah. I'm so close. Don't you want to see me again?" His voice warped into sadness, a haunting melody woven with longing that sliced through her courage. The moment stretched, taut as a wire, uncertainty rippling across her mind. She shut her eyes, feeling the darkness that had claimed Doug. Images flickered through her memory, their laughter, their shared dreams, the light between them dimming with unrelenting despair. Could she close her eyes to the specter of her own betrayal? Or was it time to confront the darkness head-on? Sarah. Doug's voice shook, now tentative, like a whisper of a breeze before a storm. "It's me. Please. I'm suffering." She pressed her forehead against the door, despair coiling around her chest like a vice. Simon, her old therapist, had told her that bravery was not the absence of fear, but the resolve to face it. Was this her moment? Gathering every ounce of strength, she shouted, "If it's really you, tell me something only you would know." Silence hung heavy in the air, suffocating, until the familiar warmth of Doug's laughter seemingly flickered through the shadows. "Remember that time we got lost on the hiking trail, and you thought we were being chased by bears?" Her heart surged. Yes. And he had laughed at her fear then, telling stories until the stars sparkled with light. "Now you're just being ridiculous," she yelled, shaking off her fear. "You would never tell that story if you were indeed," he interrupted, and the voices of shadows wove into his speech. "If I were what? A lie? A grain of sand among many? You know too well what lurks in the dark." She froze, realization hitting her like ice-cold water. The truth loomed ahead, sharper than guilt. If she let him in, what would follow? "Sarah." Doug's voice coiled around her heart. "I can save you, you just have to trust me." Would she trust the echoes of the past or heed the whispering shadows creeping ever closer? The corners of the garage darkened, a noxious breath slithering toward her. It wasn't just Doug behind that door anymore, it was something else, something lurking waiting to feast. That a jarring thud against the door sent her stumbling back. Panic rushed through her veins, heart pounding, breath shallow. Was this the dimensional rift she had thought she escaped, reaching out to drag her back? Or was it her last chance to save Doug, to reclaim the light flickering within? She had no choice. It was either step boldly into the murky abyss of doubt and hope or seal his fate. "Doug, tell me more," she cried, determination surging beneath the waves of dread, sensing every heartbeat counting down to a final choice. And then silence, heavy as the shadows shifting at her feet. Could she be the one to break the cycle? Could she truly face what lay on the other side? The silence that followed her desperate plea was suffocating, wrapping around Sarah like a shroud. Her heart raced, pounding in her chest like a warning drum. The dark air thickened, coiling tightly, threatening to suffocate her. Every moment felt stretched thin, taut, like a rubber band ready to snap. "Sarah, I can't hold on much longer, you have to believe me." Doug's voice seeped through the shadows, glimmering with urgency. But it didn't sound right. It felt distorted, twisted. Each word echoed but hit differently, like whispers lost within a broken mirror. She stepped back from the door, her hands trembling, searching for a way out of this torment. What if the shadows were right? What if she had already lost him? With a sudden crash, the door shuddered violently, a guttural roar erupting from beyond. It felt as if the very fabric of reality began to unravel. Fear surged through her veins, a pulse of adrenaline that made her legs tremble. That noise had been unlike anything she had ever heard, a cacophony of frustration and despair that rattled her to her core. "Sarah." It was more than a voice now, it was a plea, a raw, desperate cry that shook the ground beneath her. She pressed her back against the cold wall, feeling its rough surface bite into her skin. "Please," she gasped, "just tell me what is happening." The door splintered with another heavy thud, the shadows beneath it wriggled like worms through the cracks, searching for a way in. You have to decide. Doug's voice had changed, now laced with a darker tone. Am I the one you want to save? Or is it the idea of me that comforts you? Glimmers of doubt pierced her heart. What if she didn't want to face the truth? What if this was all an illusion crafted by her own fears? Am I the monster? The words slipped from her trembling lips, laced with dread. The silence returned, heavy and filled with an unspeakable weight. Sarah's shadows climbed across her vision, swirling like tangled vines. It felt wrong. Things should never get this far. Her sanity, her memories of Doug, began to fray around the edges, each moment she spent trapped in this room pulling her deeper into a pit of confusion. Trust me, Doug's voice slipped between sides, now sounding more like a haunting echo. Help me. Set me free. We can escape together. Escape? The word felt hollow in her mouth. Wasn't she the one in danger? Wasn't she the one trapped in an unyielding dark? What if you're not really there? What if I let in what's pretending to be you? Laughter rang out, a sound too sinister, too distant. You can't be serious. You think this is about me, don't you? It's about what's inside you, the darkness that's been festering. Her numbness cracked open like an egg, spilling a tempest of regret and confusion. She felt entrapped, caught in a web of her own making. Could he still be in there? Or had something else claimed him entirely? The door rattled again, but this time there was something different, something that sent a wave of ice through her spine. I can see you, Sarah. I see what you're hiding. What are you talking about? The gut-wrenching fear clawed at her, and she couldn't breathe. We'll be together, just like before. Join me, embrace it. The darkness thickened, a feral breath creeping in. She could almost feel it graze her skin, tendrils wrapping tightly around her throat. No. She shook her head, wrestling with the shadows in a desperate attempt to reclaim her own thoughts. I want to let you in. Something cracked behind the door, splintering wood giving way to a rising tide of darkness that pulsed with malicious energy. She had to act. Sarah took a step forward, fear transforming into resolve. If you're in there, if this is truly you, show me. A throaty growl rattled through the door in response. You should have kept your mouth shut. Was this the moment everything would change? What else awaited her on the other side, hungry and angry? As the door finally shuddered open, dark figures poured through the gap, casting twisted shapes in the fading light. Would she find salvation or something far worse? The shadows swirled around her, entrapping her in a merciless dance. Would she become the very thing she feared? The darkness surged around Sarah, clawing at her arms, wrapping her body in suffocating embrace. Her pulse quickened, each beat echoing like a warning siren against the backdrop of her growing dread. She instinctively dug her heels into the floor, resisting the pull of the shadows that whispered secrets she dared not hear. What had stepped through the door? What horror lurked just beyond the threshold? Her breath felt ragged, jagged shards of air piercing her lungs as she fought to remember Doug's voice through the chaos. The figures moved like smoke, shifting and morphing into grotesque shapes that mocked her with glimpses of her own fears. Let me go. She screamed, but her words felt small, lost in the void. The shadows seemed to pulse, their edges flickering like candle flames. She squinted, trying to make out faces, features, anything familiar in the murky gloom. Was her mind playing tricks? Or was something truly coming for her, something far worse than she could bear to imagine? Embrace it, Sarah, one of the figures hissed, its voice layered and heavy, dripping with malice. You're not strong enough to fight it. It's hungry for you. Shut up. She cried, her throat dry and burning. I'll never give in. But the oppressive weight of darkness only pressed down more heavily, filling her ears with dissonant whispers. Each sound crawled under her skin, sending chills cascading through her body. The laughter echoed, twined with cries of despair, a haunting symphony of her personal nightmares. What if I'm more than what you remember? Came a voice, close but distorted, chilling her to the bone. The unseen figure shifted, always just out of reach. What if I've already won? Memory flashed through her mind, Doug, gentle and warm, holding her. But it felt like a faded photograph, fraying at the edges. The darkness twisted, reshaping into images that felt wrong, mocking her brain's natural instinct to cling to what was good. Out of sheer desperation, Sarah pulled a small shard of broken glass from the floor, her fingers trembling as she clutched it tightly. "Stay back!" she shouted. The shadows paused, recoiling as if struck. A throaty growl resonated, deep and primal, sending vibrations through the floor. "You think that will save you?" With new resolve, she lunged towards the heart of the dark mass, the glass shard aimed directly into the thickest part where the laughter seemed loudest. The shadows writhed, exploding outward in a brilliant flash of pain and rage. "Stop!" they shrieked, voices blending into an unholy choir that threatened to drown her. "You think you're the hero? You can't escape us. I'm not afraid of you!" Sarah screamed, her voice echoing through the chaos, rippling against the broken reality that surrounded her. She felt warmth in her chest, a fire igniting amidst the icy grasp of fear. Maybe this was her way to fight back, to take control. As the darkness recoiled, she surged forward, adrenaline coursing through her veins, aiming for whatever truth hid behind this grotesque masquerade. With each step, the shadows seemed to thin, but they hissed and clawed, desperate to keep her in their grasp. "I won't lose myself to you," she shouted, driving the shard deeper into the heart of darkness. A deafening silence followed, the air charged with raw energy. Time felt suspended, and for that tiny moment, she believed she might break free, but then came a rush, a surge of shadows crashing back as if they were waves against a crumbling cliff. They wrapped around her tightly, pulling her back into the abyss. "No!" she gasped, feeling the panic flood her once more. As she was dragged deeper into the murky chaos, flashes of her own insecurities rushed back, her deepest fears echoing louder than the darkness itself. Would her resolve hold? Could she truly find Doug, or had he long since been consumed? With the shadows closing in, she could barely hold on to one thought: what if it wasn't he, just Doug trapped on the other side? What if she was the one who was lost? And in that moment of realization, she felt the shadows whisper something chilling. "Welcome home, Sarah." Was this place of horror where she truly belonged? Or was there still a way out before the darkness succeeded in claiming her completely? The shadows encircled Sarah, clouding her vision and tightening around her throat like a noose. Each whisper wrapped around her, pulling her deeper into despair. "Welcome home, Sarah," they taunted, their voices echoing with a chilling familiarity, twisting her heart in knots. But just as the darkness threatened to complete its grip, a spark ignited within her. Memories of laughter, warmth, and love flooded her mind. Doug's reassuring smile, his hands intertwined with hers, became a beacon amid the chaos. "No!" Sarah shouted, shaking off the tendrils of darkness that sought to claim her. "I choose light." With every ounce of willpower coursing through her veins, she twisted the shard of glass into the delirium surrounding her, the point aimed at the heart of the shadows. "You think you can consume me?" she screamed, her voice rising above the undead cries. "I am more than fear. I will fight." The shadows recoiled, screeching, their forms buckling and twisting in agony. "You have no idea what you're unleashing," they howled, but she pressed forward, feeding the fire of hope within her. As she plunged the shard deeper into the core, the darkness erupted with a blinding light, scattering like ashes in the wind. The shrieks faded, replaced by silence, a profound emptiness. Sarah found herself standing in a vast space, bright and pure, as the taint of shadows dissolved around her. "Sarah!" Doug's voice broke through, filled with warmth, and in a heartbeat, he appeared before her, unharmed and more alive than she had ever seen him. "You made it. I knew you would." But before he could say another word, the realization hit her like a tidal wave. You were trapped. She stammered, eyes wide with concern. They pulled you. I thought I lost you forever. Doug stepped forward, his expression earnest but somber. The darkness thrives on our fears and unresolved guilt. We both had to confront it. You fought the shadows, not just for me but for both of us. What about all the patients? Her voice faltered, knowing too well the faces of the souls who had slipped away in that wretched place that he reached for her hand, clasping it tightly. They're free now. You've set them free. The realization washed over her like a golden glow. In their struggle, they had released not only themselves but the souls trapped in that hospice for too long. The streets of Willow Creek felt lighter now, as if the very air had become less oppressive. But then another thought pierced her thoughts, dark as the shadows they had fought. But what happens now? She whispered, fear creeping back in. Would the darkness come back? Doug's gaze was steady, resolute. The shadows will always haunt those who hold on to their regret. But know this, it's our choice on how we live now. We can choose to let go or be consumed. The weight in her chest eased just a little, knowing the decision rested in her hands. I want to live. I want to be with you, really with you. Not just the ghost of who we used to be. A soft smile crept upon his lips, and he pulled her closer. Then let us not look back. We stepped into the light, let us make it shining bright. As his words echoed in her heart, a rush of determination surged through Sarah. This was their chance to create something new, to build a future that was entirely theirs, free from the shadows of the past. The dark corridors of the hospice faded from her memory, replaced by the vibrant colors of a new beginning. With Doug by her side, holding tightly onto her hand, they walked forward together into a world that awaited them, filled with possibilities, laughter, and love, the brilliance of life. But if they were to truly leave the past behind, they needed to support each other every step of the way. Each day would be a choice to let the light in, to push away the darkness they had fought so hard against, and as Sarah took a final glance back toward the remnants of the shadows dissolving behind them, relief washed over her. Goodbye, she whispered. Goodbye to who I was. It was time to begin anew. Listen, folks. This is the moment you've been waiting for. If you loved this story and want more, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel. Don't let a single exclusive tale slip through your fingers. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. You know how much that support means. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. I want to hear what you think. Every single one of you matters, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us spread this story far and wide. Remember, only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel. Let's keep this journey alive.